Hey guys, in this little Blender tutorial, I'm going to show you how I made this super simple little pixel cutout guy. He's got a little animation to it, looks at the camera, waves, smiles, looks away kind of worriedly the more I look at it. Anyway, really simple stuff. It took me around I'd say under an hour just to get all of this done. And you don't need to be that proficient in Blender to sort of know what's happening here. So let's start with the character first and how I got this little guy into Blender. As you can see, it's not just one character file. There's all these little different layers, much like you'd see in other cutout animation types in other programs like Photoshop. Different parts of their body are on different layers. And we're just sort of mimicking that layer style, but in 3D space, which is a lot more fun and cool. Anyway, I'm going to switch over to the pixel art program I use for this to make this random little dude. The program is called Aseprite. Okay, there it is. So this is what you see when you start up Aseprite. Not really anything too complex. So I just made a little head here, and notice how all the different parts, like the Photoshop layers I talked about a little earlier, I constructed this character on different layers themselves. So I drew basically everything in its little place, and here we have this sort of strange looking character. It doesn't look exactly like him in the Blender one, but I started with the eye base and all that, and what I kept in mind was where I would rotate these things. And also, I don't, because it's a very simple character with basic kind of symmetry. They have the same arms on either side. I didn't need to draw in this program another arm or anything. No, same thing with the legs. All I can do is just mirror that image essentially in Blender, and it'll have the same effect. But I do want to talk real quick about the mouth, because the mouth is a little interesting. The mouth layer has every single mouth here, and obviously that looks very strange in context of the whole character. But the reason I'm doing this is because instead of making a different layer for each mouth type and then sort of putting one layer behind the other and animating the visibility, blah blah blah, that's tedious and that takes a while. So I put every little mouth on one layer and exported it like that, because what we can do is animate, where is that? We can animate the UVs so that it moves to that mouth. And then we can use different frame interpolation so that it doesn't look like the mouth is randomly moving off the screen and switching to it. It's just a quick flash, like a pixel style animation would be. You wouldn't animate the mouth moving off screen until it gets to the next one. Anyway, so that's the basic file, and I just exported each layer on their own. For once I was organized and actually put it in a folder called Cutout Test. I'm very proud of myself because everything else is a mess. And I even named the layers. Wow, I am prepared this time. Okay, so yeah, exported that. That's all you need to know in Aseprite, and you don't need a program like this. There's other free pixel softwares, but any software that can use pixel art, that's what you do. Also, it'd probably need layers, but you could get away with just having an individual file for everything. That's really annoying though. Anyway, that's all there is for that. Cool. Now we go into Blender, and there's a lot of different little avenues we can go down first. Let's talk about probably the most basic one, the parenting. So if we go into solid mode, you can see that this is disgusting sludge of planes here. Not exactly appealing to the eye, but what this translates to is our little guy here. So I'm going to try and find the plane for the head, or you can just go in the properties tab and find the head. And if I go click this drop down, we see that a lot of the different body parts are parented to the head. So basically, when the head object moves, where is that? When the head object moves, everything else, you can see these little planes moving too. Oh, it's so nasty in this mode. But if I move the head up, then we see that the arms and everything moves with it. And that's just with basic parenting, where you take a plane, you take like the arm here, click it, and then you right click what you want to be the parent object, what you want, what object you want to affect the other ones, essentially. So you can essentially right click here and hit Control P, or because it's kind of hard to tell which plane is which, I'm just going to play it safe, and I'm going to click Arm R and then shift click the head. Oh, just kidding, sorry. Click Arm R, Control click the head. Shift click selects everything with it. We just want Control click to say only Arm R will go with the head. And then you hit Control P, and you'll say parent to object. I say keep transform just because I place the arm there where I want it to be, and if it keeps the transform, that means it stays there. But if I move the head, or scaled the head, or rotated the head, it would move with it. Just proof of concept. If I rotate it here, Blender will respond. Yes. Oh, that's because I'm rotating the eyes. Okay. Go up here, rotate it, scale it. Yeah, everything's affected. I'll go into, I'll explain why the feet aren't parented to it, but it's pretty obvious because if we look at the whole animation, we want this, I don't know, like old 1920s, 30s Disney style where they're just hopping up and down. And if I had the head, if I parented the feet to the head, where is that? Where are my feet? Take these two guys, and then I'll take Control click the head, hit keep transform. Now the feet are parented to the head. Now it just moves like that, which I guess if he's floating, sure, it works. Not for these purposes though. So that's just a really, like that's the basic parenting of it, was I gave the mouth, the eyes, and the arms all the same kind of, all the same parent, because when the head moves, all those different body parts move. That'd be really weird and anatomically scary if your eyes didn't move when your head moved. But that's the basics of the parenting system. I also wanted to keep them layered so that obviously the right arm, or I guess just the arm in front, stays in front here. And I positioned these beforehand so that when I hit Control P, when I hit the parent button essentially and said keep transformation, it keeps all that in place. Sometimes when you hit just parent it, it'll go to the object, it'll go to the head's origin point. So yeah. Let's quickly talk about how I got the arms essentially to rotate on those different axes, because that's probably one of the major fundamentals of cutout animation. Is it has an anchor point, and those anchor points should usually reflect the joints. So if it's a human body, you're going to want your anchor point of, say, the forearm or just the arm as a whole on the shoulder, because that's where it initially rotates from. And then you can add more complex joints like the elbow and just go down the figure essentially. But here we've got, if we look at this arm, it's rotating from a, fake shoulder essentially. And how I did that was I went to Arm R. Yeah, this is Arm R. And you see this little dot here? That is the origin point of this plane. And you can alter the origin point. Initially, it goes to whatever your geometry is. So because I used a plane for this, if I go Shift Control C and say origin to geometry, it's going to go smack dab in this sort of center of it. Maybe I didn't apply this scale, and that's why. If I do that, what if it, or maybe there's just a little perspective. I don't really know, but it goes to the center of it loosely. I guess it's not. Maybe it's a little rectangular. Maybe it's not a full plane. Anyway, so you can switch that around. You can tell any point either on the plane or even out of it. I've never tried that. Yeah, okay. That works. Weird. So what I did was I went to this plane, I went into edit mode, and I basically designated this area of his little arm as the point. And how I did that was I hit Control R to make a loop cut, which just makes an edge, and then I made another loop cut on this side, and basically the intersection of those two, that became my little point. And then, because when you want to set the origin to a specific point, what you have to do is you will hit Shift S, and that'll bring the 3D cursor. It'll bring the 3D cursor to your little joint here. And then if you hit Shift Control, well, this is my hotkey, so let me see, where would it be here? Set origin. If you go to Object up here, you go to Set Origin, you hit Origin to 3D cursor, bam. Now it's rotating on that joint, on that hinge. Whereas before, if I just hit Origin to geometry and I rotate it, he's got a much wider arc. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. So that's how I basically just parented these legs, and I don't think did I even do any of that for the legs? No, for the other legs, because they're not rotating or anything. I just kept the origin as is. So that's the basics of, got a little checklist here. We got parenting done, and we got cutout done. Cool. Quick addendum to the thing. I didn't talk at all about the symmetry. How did I get the symmetry? Well, let's see here. We go to head, and we go to arm L. Oops, arm R. I think we started out with arm R. What you can do to get basic, really basic symmetry, Shift D. Shift D duplicates your thing. Bam. Now you got another arm. And because it's a layer style, let me just move it. Bam. Now he's got he has 3 arms now, where you can make it seem like it's, you know, another arm behind that. I think if you also don't want, you know, the planes to be sort of messier like that, you can duplicate it and then scale it X -1. Oh, that does literally nothing because it's the same thing. But if you wanted to, if you had to mirror it essentially on the X-axis, that's how you do it. Scale it X -1. Bam. Okay. Well, we didn't need that. We just move it like that. Yep. And did the same thing with the feet. That's boom. That's how you get the symmetry. Shift D. Shift D duplicates things. Boom. Okay, cool. Bye. Now, how did we both import these planes and set up the materials? That was really simple. There's 2 ways you can do it. You can go to there's an add-on called Images as Planes that is free to enable, and you just go File, Import Images as Planes. You choose your image, and it should all import fine and dandy. But one, it kind of sets it up for you, and though it's really simple to manipulate, I just found it a better learning experience to start from just scratch. So if I go Shift C to center the cursor, and everything zoomed out a lot. What I did was I hit Shift A, but you can see that. Hopefully you can see these little screencast keys, which is really nifty. Added a plane, didn't change the scale or anything. Then I rotated it 90 degrees. And we're just going to bring it out a bit for demonstration purposes. And now we have this ugly blech plane in front. How do we make it so that we get a character there and the background is hidden? Well, I guess what I should have said first is this is all in the Eevee rendering engine. If we did this in cycles, I think the program would just die a little bit. Oh my god. Just kidding. I didn't know that the alpha clip stuff actually worked in cycles. That's kind of great. I don't know where his other leg went though. Hello? Huh. Now that's weird. Anyway, I use Eevee because it's much more simple and better for these sort of non-photorealistic style things. You don't have to wait for the whole scene to load every time you move the camera. I'm on really small samples and there's nothing complex going on here in terms of light paths. Once you start adding crazier stuff, it just gets annoying for it to load. Eevee though, great. Real-time rendering, cool. So, what I did to this plane was I went to the Materials tab, indicated by this little red guy, and I hit Add New, and now I got this principled BSDF material. Let me just quickly check. Did I use an emission? No, I just straight up... What did I do here? This is all fluff that I didn't use, and that's what's throwing me off. Okay, that's interesting. I just used that, huh? What about for this guy? Huh. Interesting. I should have been more prepared for this. But whatever. You start out with something called the Principled BSDF, which is really great if you want to do a bunch of different kinds of more photorealistic materials, because you've got a lot of different things. You can make it metallic, you can make it more shiny, you can give it a different index of refraction for like glass and stuff. But since this is just a simple pixel plane, we don't need any of that. So boom, there we go. It's gone. Now it's this black sludge. How do we fix that? We will go to we'll go texture, image texture, and then we'll go to shader, and we'll go to transparent BSDF. Basically what these two things are is this is going to be where our image comes from, obviously. There's a little file button here. And the transparent BSDF is going to tell us, is going to make the background part of this transparent. We're not going to be able to, it's going to be completely see-through. So if we go to shader here, go to mix shader, because we gotta mix these two guys together. And technically, this is a color output, and this is a shader input, and the yellow and the green, you want to match your colors for the most part, yellow to yellow, green to green, but we're really lazy. So if I go to shader and I just connect these little nodes up. Oh, by the way, sorry, this viewport was already open for me, but if you just see this as your screen, there's two different ways you can get to that workflow. You can click the shading tab. I don't like this shading tab because it messes up everything, and I don't have files here. My files are disgusting. UV is helpful, but this is like and also puts you in material preview instead of your rendered. But this is good for a good shader workflow because you're going to want a lot of space. I'm just, I guess, a little strange, and I just pull out a tab here, go to this guy, go to shader editor, bam. Because we don't need that much space. We're not doing anything complex. So you're going to want to take these two guys and then connect it to here. And it's all black and it still looks like nothing. Well, first of all, we have to import our image texture. And let's see, cutout test. Nice. I think what I'm going to do real quick is, just so I don't mess up the other image textures, I'm going to find that file and just make a duplicate. Cutout test. go Control C and then Control V. This is copy. I'll say VG2. Okay. And that way, none of the other parts of this is going to be affected when we start adding material shaders and stuff. So we're going to open, sorry about that, cutout test, and we're going to BG2. And here is this really ugly looking thing, because how many pixels was that? If I go to my sprite properties, it's 32 by 32. Doesn't work well when you scale it up. Just, hang on, Blender's look just disgusting. And the way that you normally fix this with most pixel art is you'll scale your pixel art with a type of method called nearest neighbor, where with other scaling methods, I think it's trying to add a little blur to it because it's for, you know, a real life photo or something. And you want the blur you want to make it bigger, but you also want to make it slightly believable. You don't want to see harsh edges. But with pixel art, it's obviously the exact opposite. You want those harsh edges. So what we'll do is there's luckily a way to fix this. You go to linear, this little tab here, linear, and you switch that to closest. And that is pretty much the same thing as nearest neighbor. Oh, I just realized something. Using this example was terrible to show the power of the transparent BSDF. I'm going to fix that real quick and make another duplicate. I'm going to go with the head. I did delete that plane. I don't know why I did that. Plane was fine. It's the node that was wrong. It's my fault. Alright, so we'll go back to here and we'll get, I just selected background 2 again. God damn it. Go to here, head copy, there we go. Now here's where the problem lies. Also, because I goofed with the background, it's already set to closest. If it was linear, you'd get this gross mess still. So that's closest, great. But what is with this ugly black background? Nothing is like the transparent color that you saw in your pixel program or whatever. Essentially, it treats the transparent part as just a black color. I'm not sure about the logistics. I just know how to get how to do the workaround. And this is why it's important to have that sort of alpha channel saved with your sprite, or else if it's white, I think you could do a workaround with nodes. You can do anything in nodes. Nodes are magic, but for sake of simplicity, just have an alpha channel. And what we do is, so we've got our mix shader, right? And it's switching between these two different factors. I did forget. You want to change your blend mode to alpha clip or alpha blend. I'm just going to do alpha clip though, because what alpha clip does is it says, it'll basically, you can make your texture just transparent or not transparent. With alpha blend, it's more gradual. You can change that with different node parameters. But since we're not fading anything in, it's just harsh transparency, we're going to do alpha clip. And now there's nothing. There was blackness, and now there's nothing this time. Well, that's because of this little factor right here. It's mixing between the two shaders here. Although this isn't a shader, it's literally just a texture. So what we can do is we need to essentially tell Blender what I want as the background and what I want as this thing to be rendered. And right now Blender doesn't know anything. It's just saying, okay, this has more to the transparent side, so it's gone. And now it's here, now it's gone. If I go to alpha, our little alpha tab here, and I switch that into the factor, well, now everything but the texture is rendering. Let me just check. There's two different ways to work around this. Yes. You can switch. What you do is you take these little inputs here and you just flip them. And it'll say, oh, the inverse of that is your texture. Nice. If for some reason you don't want to do that, I think if we go to invert, if we find an invert node and plop them here, it has the same effect. Literally no other reason. I kind of like that it's a cutout. But yeah, just take these guys and flip them. Bam. Oh. Shit. Okay, there we go. And you want to do this for all of your little textures. The one where it deviates, though, is the mouth. And the mouth that I talked about earlier, with everything being on one layer. I will show you what I mean by that. If I drag another little window here and go to UV editor. Alright. This is the mouth plane, by the way. I know it's just a pixel, but that's his mouth. And I go to edit mode, and if you have the UV editor and you go to your edit and stuff like that, so basically what I did here, what did I do here? I'm trying to remember what I did here on the spot. This is the part I came the least prepared for. If I hit unwrap, does that do anything? Yes, it does. So what you're gonna do initially is scale, scale your mouth and everything, scale whatever part that you need it to change, and make sure that no other parts of this UV is going to show. But you can fix that either with the plane itself or scaling it or But I think a Blender plane will come with the unwrap, but just in case, go to edit mode, select everything with A, and unwrap. Now you've got all these different things here, which you don't want. You don't want all the different mouths. That doesn't make sense. So you're going to go to your UV, and you're going to move this guy roughly to, a good spot. And what we're doing in principle is we're just taking this UV and we're animating it so it switches over. Yeah, I guess we could do that too. That's not really a mouth. I don't know why I thought that would look like a mouth. You can even move around more complex. I don't know. It's your animation, man. But yes, this is generally what we're doing. We're just switching the two. And how do we switch the two? It's a pretty simple setup. It takes a little more nodage, but not that much. And again, if you're completely new to Blender, this is going to be fine. This is a lot of these nodes, if you're using Blender, you're going to experience them a lot, like texture coordinates and mapping, but if you just want them for a one-time thing, that's fine too. What I did was I took I just hit search because I don't remember. I think mapping is in the vector section. We'll go to mapping, and oh, we don't want that. Don't want that attached. We have a mapping node, and then we go to input. Yes, we go to texture coordinate node. We basically hook all those guys up, like I did here, with the UV going to the mapping node and the vector going to the this vector going into the vector of the image texture. Now, how did we get this square moving? I think there's a couple different ways to animate this with certain add-ons, like you can directly animate the UVs here. I just went with a slightly more ballpark approach, and I used the mapping node. And if I go to, let's see, I've got the mouse selected, and I go to this mapping guy. I'm just going to scroll down the timeline here to the beginning. And we've got some different keyframes here. We got this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. So this is probably, this is the keyframe change that, moves the mouth essentially. But what I did was, what you're doing with this, moving and scaling, if I can scale it, and rotate it, you're doing the same thing with this mapping texture. You're moving it. It doesn't reflect it, I don't think, or maybe it'll like update it, but you're moving it around. You're moving around this texture. Z's not going to make any sense because it's a flat plane, but you got your rotation. Oh, yeah, vectors are a little weird. And I don't fully understand them. You'd think it would just rotate like normal, or like we saw in the editor, but no, I guess not. Whatever. Yeah, you can do a bunch of weird shit with mapping nodes. Anyway, how many times have I said anyway now? Probably a lot. What I did was I went to the start, or actually I went to when he was gonna change his little mouth position. I added a keyframe by hitting I, and when you hit I on this location section, it keyframes everything. For the purposes of our animation, since it's only moving just, you know, along the x-axis here, you just need the X. What you could do is right-click it and say insert single keyframe. In this case, I already have one, so it would say replace. But I just hit I because I'm lazy. And then this took a little fine-tuning, but I found, you know, another keyframe where the mouth would change, and then I just kind of guessed. I just clicked this arrow because if you do it immediately, it goes a long way. And this is a small image. Everything is tiny, so we're gonna want to. Oh, is it gonna backspace? Yes, thank you. We're just going to want to move it ever so slightly to the left, which has a negative direction. If we look here, it's a negative direction, positive direction. Yeah, basic coordinate stuff. Cool. So we got one here, and we got one here. The problem, what you'll first see, is if I take these guys, they're probably on Bezier or Bezier. And whoop, it looks a bit weird. It looks a bit weird that it's shifting like that. Also, I didn't actually know the UVs were moving ever so slightly that way. Interesting. Oh wait, yeah, of course, because you have to switch back to the mouth. But this is just Bezier interpolation. If I get out of this UV thing, and there's a much better, concise explanation of this UV moving around, how to get different mouths by Mandala Motion, I believe their YouTube channel is. I will link that one, because, dude, that guy's tutorials, they're so helpful, and they're so fast. They're like 30 seconds long, compared to this. Oh my god, it's 32 minutes? Yikes. Okay, I'll try and wrap this up, because wow. I'm sorry. Cool. First tutorial, man. That's whack. So what we'll do, I'll say that a lot. What we'll do is it's set to Bezier first. If I go to this little guy, this little icon, I go to the graph editor, you're gonna see some weird, kind of scary stuff. And if things are really zoomed out and it's hard to zoom in, maybe hit normalize, and that'll help kind of rein things in. So we got the mouth. We go down the shader tree, because we're essentially making a keyframe, right? And that keyframe is a part of the mouth, which is part of the shader tree, and it's this mapping one in particular. And all we want is the X value. We can actually just lock these two if we need to, but see how they're just a flat line? It's because we didn't animate them. We did animate this one. And Bezier will take essentially your animation curves and start it off gradually and end it gradually, which yeah, they're good for a lot of different, you know, more realistic movements, but mouths don't work like this. Just for reference, linear interpolation does the same thing, but it's a little bit more harsh. But what we're going to want to do for our purposes is set it to constant. Because what constant does is says, okay, this is your keyframe here, and this is your keyframe here. We're not gonna do any crazy curve stuff. We're not gonna if I take this guy and move him out, rotate him, or do something. Not some crazy quick motions, just straight to the point, boom, constant. And that's how you'll get that quick, switch to the frame, which is what you want, especially for these sort of pixel style animations where things are, they're done frame by frame, so it wouldn't make sense to have subframes. And that's how I got the mouth to switch like that. And then I just added another keyframe, with the same constant interpolation. I think that's what it's called, by the way. The transition between these keyframes, it's different types of interpolation. So if you see that word, it's not fancy or hard to understand. Boom, switches. Great. That is what I did to get the mouth moving. Since we're in the graph editor, I'll quickly explain, how did I get the this guy to just bounce essentially infinitely? How did I get these different arm animations? Well, for your project, I'm not going to go into the quote unquote the intricacies of waving or anything like that, but I will explain this bouncing motion and what I did for it, because it's kind of neat. I did not want to animate the head bobbing up and down and up and down. I did not want to keep adding keyframes and just hoping that it was all the same, or that's just boring and is work. So what I did was I used a really handy feature in Blender, in the Modifiers tab, called Cycles. And what you do is you make some keyframes, you make some initial movement, and then you tell Blender, hey, just do that, and just keep doing it forever, and even before time. Just keep going. Now there are some limitations to this. You can't add another keyframe. Say we got the little frame indicators here. What if I wanted a different animation to play, after 30 frames? Well, if I say, move the head up. Oh, wait, which one is this? Z location, yeah. Well, I'll just move the head up here and make eye and then location. And oh, wait a second, what happened to all my curves? Well, it's taking all your curve data and it's saying, oh, we're just going to repeat everything you did. So now it's repeating everything I did. Whoop, and it looks just weird. So for this, instead, I start with a base frame where he's going to be, and I would hit I and then location. You can hit lock rot scale, you can hit lock rot. Basically, with location, it just means, the location is going to be affected when I add this keyframe. If I change the rotation, it's not going to be stored in the keyframe data because I didn't use a rotation one. Same with scaling, delta, and this stuff I haven't ventured into. So I have my base frame, and then I have my down, just little scrunched guy, and then I took that same keyframe and hit Shift D and just copied it over and put it, however long I wanted him to be down for. I think I tried. Hang on a second. Okay, jump cut, because someone just came to my door. And they're like, are these your flowers? And I said, no, we didn't order any flowers. Where the hell was I? Right, the animation, the cycly things, great, cool. I think I meant to make these spaced out evenly. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Oh my god. Well, I wanted to make it, evenly spaced, but there's a frame in between where it makes this section a little longer than the other one. Whatever, it doesn't matter. That's just like a stupid attention to detail that doesn't matter. But anyway, whatever these frames are, they'll get looped essentially forever and ever and ever and ever and ever with the cycles. I didn't use it for this tutorial, but I will say if you go into the tab here, and I hit N by the way, oh, it doesn't show. It shows it here. That's very interesting. It shows it here, but it doesn't show elsewhere. Okay, I thought it would show the screencast. I guess it only shows it in the 3D view. Good to know. If I hit N, that brings up the modifiers tab, brings up this whole mini tab. You can also, if you really see this tiny indicator here, pull out. There you go. And what I can do, if you want to stop it, is you can restrict the frame range to certain places, or you can use the influence. The only problem with using the influence is I don't think you can animate this, right? Yes, you cannot animate the influence properties. So that is for doing some weird shit. And more finessing it, because you can't animate it. But if you want the cycle to stop, you just tell it what its in and out points are, and then you can mess with it however you want. But now we have this little bobbing animation, and there you go. He's just doing his thing. The arm, is this the arm? No, it's the eyes. The eyes I used a couple different type of interpolation types, like the back. I like the back one a lot, where you'll move a little forwards, a little too much from the keyframe you set, and then settle backwards. Really nice for motion graphics in particular. Everyone just abuses the hell out of that. Quick jump here, don't know what the interpolation type is. But I think that pretty much wraps it up in how I did this. Again, just be mindful that in your camera view, I didn't really talk about the camera, but it's fairly simple to set up. If I hit Shift-C, and center everything, I say, hey, make a camera. Shift-A, make a camera. It's going to be positioned weirdly, all that. If I hit Alt-R and Alt-G, it'll just get rid of all the different rotations. And I took it, I moved it back, I rotated it 90 degrees, and well, because it's going to... I have to just set the active object to camera, because the camera I have is already, it's the active one. Boom, now I'm in this camera view, and if I hit G, Z's, 2 Z's, I basically zoom in more or less. And on this, in this tab, there's different camera settings. Because it's a pixel style animation and things are supposedly flat when they're not, I used an orthographic camera. And then I just messed with the scale so that I can fit everything in frame. You can zoom in a lot, you can zoom in a little, but you'll see the difference with perspective versus non. You don't see it from this angle, but if I made it like 15 meters and then positioned it from this really weird angle, yeah, you start to get a lot of the perspective distortion, especially with such a wide angle lens. Orthographic, it's flat, but you get that really cool sort of like top-down effect if you do it right. Whatever. And I'll just set the active object camera again, and I just set it up wherever it seemed convenient. There's not even a freaking shadow. I did not try hard on this. You hit play, and there's the little dude. I think that wraps it up. Name your objects. Name everything. Naming is good. Don't be like me and just have like 50 of the same cylinder named item. It's terrible. It's terrible practice. Oh, and just quickly about the background, because I forgot about that. Same technique, right? Using the alpha. I don't know what that does. It doesn't... Oh. I guess it does something. In hindsight, I didn't need that. I did not need that. Is this on Filmic? I think it should be standard, right? A quick note about the color grading. Because Blender, by default, expects you to do not this sort of pixely style cutout, flat colors animation. It's going to use Filmic for their color management, for their view transform, I guess it's called. But that gives you a lot of different values to play with as opposed to other sort of color systems. But we just want these standard. We want just the pixel colors that we had essentially in Aseprite. We want them here. Hit standard, and they'll be much more, pixely and stuff. You won't get little artifacts. If I go to Filmic again, you might see, there's this kind of like ugly tint to it, which is fine for most things, but not this. And for my render, I forgot to do the standard. But that'll give you, again, a much more crisp look to it. The background was just the same thing. I added an array modifier to repeat it. That's it. And then with this one, what did I do here? It's kind of weird, wasn't it? This is the background, but I think I did the UV thing. I'm pretty sure what I did was, if I go to UV editor, I did the same UV trick as I did with the mouth, because I didn't want to just make another rendering of only the brow. Excuse me. Instead, I just made the UV really tiny, and because there's no other gradations, right? It's all just one pixel color. Boom, makes it look like ground. If you move it up, it looks horrifying, and the sky is rising. Not sure. But that's how I got the background. Super simple stuff. You can animate it. You can make it look like it's running. You can do anything you want. Sky is the limit. If I go here and then I make like a little loop cut for his leg. And then I hit, where is that? There we go. Do that. And then do 3D cursor. And oops. Damn it, that was his other leg. Well, whatever. You can animate the legs. You can make it do whatever. There's a lot more complex things, but I'm not that skilled with this. I just wanted to show the really basic setup I got here. I know this video went on for a while, but I wanted to explain all the little things in some amount of depth. Because if I just showed you, just add this, it keeps liking the same thing. Add this, pair into it, there, you're done. People might, not have a huge, they might not have all the little Blender know-how, all the little muscle memory and stuff like that. So I'll put timestamps just in the description saying which parts you can skip if you're curious. But anyway, that's how I did really, really simple little guy, simple pixel cutout style. You can apply this to anything else, not just pixel stuff. Not sure how that would work with some of the more photorealistic things, but maybe I'll work on a tutorial for that later. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. That's the tutorial. I will see you guys later? ? Okay. Bye-bye.